I say you could kiss me.
I was carried away.
I wasn't.
Celebrate one of the most romantic movies of all time.
What would you say if I told you I think I'm in love with you?
You're a preppy millionaire and I'm smart and poor.
If you marry her now, I'll not give you the time of day.
Love Story.
Hello guys, how are you today? Welcome back to my channel called Blast and the Past, and this time around I have a video review of one of the greatest classics ever, probably, whether for good reasons or not, and that would be the film Love Story from 1970. So it really is a blast from the past, but actually I had been meaning for a long time to see it finally, and yesterday I had a chance to grab a copy of it and to finally put it in my Blu-ray player and give it a go. So without further ado, I would like to share my thoughts on this classic, on this cult film, and whether it has developed cult following for all the good reasons or not. I hope that you'll find out soon. Stay tuned and let's kick it off, shall we?
Love Story. Own it now on Blu-ray and digital.
Before I start digging deeper into the plot itself, into my impression of the film, my take on it, the aspects of it, some pieces of trivia, the plot, etc., I would like to draw the context of it a bit. So actually I grabbed a copy of this film only yesterday, and never before had I felt this great urge, this need to watch something. So something was drawing me to it, towards this film, like a big magnet. Right now, rarely do I have this kind of feeling, this kind of attraction to something. And the appeal, it was very strong. I just felt that I had to watch it. I have to give it a go. And for all those reasons, I decided to grab a copy of this film and finally put it into my Blu-ray player and check whether it's worth all the fame, all the glory that it gets on the internet, all the praise. So, like I said, I wanted to explain this situation to you because
I was captivated, entranced. It hit me like a thunderbolt.
rarely does it ever happen right now, unfortunately. Before it was a normal thing, that I was so drawn towards a given motion picture that I had to watch it no matter what. Rarely right now, maybe I'm a little bit burnt out, maybe I'm tired with this new cinema, but it doesn't happen so often, unfortunately. But yesterday, so I had that great revelation, like coming back to those good old days when I was a big film fan, maybe even bigger than I am right now, it's hard to say. Or maybe I'm just a little bit burnt out and fed up with what is going on right now in Hollywood. I have no idea. But I would like you to understand that before I start talking and elaborating on the film further. So let's kick it off.
You got it.
Thank you.
In terms of the plot, I think that Nick Reganas from IMDb does a pretty good job in terms of summarizing the plot of the film. So I'll just read out what he has published on IMDb. Okay? So let's get going. Harvard law student Oliver Barrett IV and music student Jennifer Cavalieri share a chemistry they cannot deny and a love they cannot ignore. Despite their opposite backgrounds, the young couple put their hearts on the line for each other. When they marry, Oliver's wealthy father threatens to disown him. Jenny tries to reconcile the Barrett men, but to no avail. Oliver and Jenny continue to build their life together. Relying only on each other, they believe love can fix anything. But fate has other plans. Soon, what begins as a brutally honest friendship became the love story of their lives. Props to Nick Reganas. That was a very good summary. Probably he did a much better job than I could ever do, especially spontaneously. So once again, kudos, props to Nick Reganas from IMDb. Actually, the beginning of this relationship is pretty rocky because at first they don't hit it off. There is this scene in particular when they meet for the first time. They decide to go to a cafe and there is a lot of tension between them, a lot of friction. So they are not on good terms at the very beginning, but later on something clicks between them, just like that. And they start eventually hitting it off. As you can guess, they fall in love.
Hey, what makes you so sure I went to prep school?
You look stupid and rich.
Actually, I'm smart and poor.
I'm smart and poor.
And it's just the beginning of something beautiful, something magnificent in their lives. But it's worth mentioning that at the very beginning, at the initial stage, it's not a bed of roses, that's for sure. So it's a very rocky relationship at first. So they are like enemies, arguing constantly, but later on, and pretty soon, they find that actually they are made for each other, and they really are a match made in heaven. So this is just worth mentioning that it's something pretty atypical. It's not like a typical romantic comedy where they just fall in love, they fell for each other head over heels from the get-go. No sir, it doesn't happen like that. Actually, in this case, the beginnings are very rough, but later on, and like I said, pretty soon, it flourishes, the relationship between them. So it's just worth noting.
Look, Cavallari, I know your game, and I'm tired of playing it. You are the supreme Radcliffe smartass. The best. You put down anything in pants. But verbal volleyball is not my idea of a relationship.
The film was released in 1970, so as of now, it's an over 50-year-old film. Can you imagine that? Time flies so quickly. Anyhow, so many people claim that it is a little bit dated, but I really like this kind of filmmaking from the 70s, from the 80s, from the 90s, where actually in the 80s I think that they perfected it, but even in the 70s, so long camera movements, panning in on the actors, the directors would take their time, they were not in a hurry, in a rush, they weren't rushing the movements of the camera. Like I said, they were taking their time, they would do it patiently and slowly, but there was some purpose behind that. There was some purpose for that. So it all adds to the charm, this peculiar atmosphere, especially of the 1970s. So there is something magical about that period. I would say about all those 3 decades. So the 70s, the 80s and the 90s respectively.
Never say love if you don't really mean it.
You think I don't mean it?
Oh, you're a known quantity, Barrett.
Meaning?
You're known for quantity. I mean, at Radcliffe, every hall is Barrett Hall.
They are all charming and magical in their own ways. And the 70s, so it is also the era of the first Rocky.
I figure if I break the guy's thumb, he gets laid off, right? He can't make
Yeah, well, don't figure.
can't
Let me
bring
do
it
the
up.
figuring, okay, Rock? From here on, just let me do the...
The film from 1976 and many other classics from that period, and really the camera work is fantastic, and the director of this film, Arthur Hiller, I would say that he does a magnificent job behind the camera as the director at the helm of this whole venture, of this whole picture.
What'd you say on the phone?
Just that I drop in to visit.
Very casual, huh?
Yeah, right.
How often do you visit during the term?
Never.
He never falls short, and like I said, there is something charming, there is something attractive in the way the events are shown in the picture. So I think that also this is an added value in terms of this picture. When you watch it for the first time or you rewatch it, you come back to it in the current times, in the modern day filmmaking, so you can easily notice the difference between how the pictures used to be filmed back then in the good old times of Hollywood and how they are made right now. So everything is rushed, everything is only done by the book, by the numbers. There is sometimes very little respect towards the making of the film, unfortunately, and it's visible, it's projected on the screen, whether you like it or not. So say what you may about the state of the CGI today, that it's magnificent, it's out of this world, it's mind-blowing, but to be honest, I prefer the good old films filmed on a genuine film reel.
Now, here is a motion picture film, 1,000 feet, 16,000 separate photographs. Let's tidy up this tangle of film by putting it on a reel.
There is even this visible grain on the screen right now. So the image is a little bit gritty, but in this very filmic way, very atmospheric, very climatic way. So that's just yet another thing speaking for this film and generally for the pictures of those magical decades.
From the most widely acclaimed new novel of the 1970s, Ali McGraw and Ryan O'Neal star in the #1 bestseller by Eric Siegel, Love Story.
Now, very briefly about the technical aspects of this DVD release. So this is the so-called Golden Collection of classic films from Hollywood, and in this case I'm very happy that actually it's a very decent release of this film. So the image has this cinematic quality, it has this normal, natural grain, and like I said, although it's only a DVD release, so there is little space on the disc, it looks really great. That's what I had been hoping for before I watched this film, and I got what I had hoped for, so I'm pretty lucky, I must say. I'm pretty satisfied with the picture quality, so it is what I had hoped for it to be, what I had expected. I'm not sure whether it's visible enough from your point of view, but definitely the picture is crisp, the picture is sharp, the quality is there, and it's nothing to distract you from the film, from enjoying this film, from taking it in. So this is exactly what a decent DVD release should be about. So maybe it never reaches the heights of a very good Blu-ray release, but definitely it doesn't distract you and it doesn't destroy your viewing experience. So like I said, props to the company who published this DVD release, because I think it's worth picking up. Whether there is a Blu-ray release or not, I have no idea, but in this case, it doesn't matter, I don't care. I have a very good, very decent, very satisfying DVD release, and that's good enough for me. Probably only the people who lived in the 70s can understand, can grasp how big of a hit that film was. It was everywhere. So the budget was only around $2 million, maybe 2.5, but it grossed around $100 million at the box office. Can you imagine how much the budget was multiplied? It is mind-blowing how big of a hit it was. And the main song for the film, entitled also Love Story, very aptly, very to the point, also is a big hit, and I think that many people recognize it. Maybe even the greatest cinema lovers haven't seen this one, this classic, but they sure as hell recognize the main song from this film. Because at that time in the 1970s, at the beginning of that decade, so actually it was played everywhere, 24/7, Love Story. It also partially explains the phenomenon of this film, why it was such a smashing, such a spectacular success. Perhaps not only was the timing good in terms of the release of the film, but all the other aspects of filmmaking, all the other elements. So the music, the musical score, the soundtrack, the performances, the work of the director, the simple, not simplistic script, and all of those things, it was a perfect combination, and that could explicate the success of this film and its cult following, which it has developed ever since.
Nobody ever expected it to become, I don't think, the phenomenon that was. Certainly, I was stunned.
From my perspective, I wouldn't say that this film is dated. Like many people claim that it is extremely archaic, it's unwatchable in the current times, because some themes, generally in life, in films, in the cinematography, are everlasting. They never get old, they never get outdated. And is there anything more beautiful than pure love, than everlasting love, than love which tries to deal with all the obstacles in life? I think that those kind of themes transverse the boundaries of decades, and they are worth thinking of and coming back to, and reusing, recycling in different films. So of course right now in 2023 there have been myriads of films dealing with the same topic, but it was one of the precursors, you have to keep that in mind. But still, yesterday, in my case, it didn't distract me from watching this film.
Why did you want to leave the minute we got there?
Because I didn't like the way they were treating you.
Like what?
What is it your parents are in, Jennifer? What is it your people are in, Jennifer?
My father bakes cookies.
It didn't work against the motion picture, against Love Story. In my case also it's pretty atypical, because it's not my usual repertoire. I'm more of an action cinema fan, an action cinema guy, so I prefer action films, thrillers, although a good drama, a good romantic comedy, or a romantic film per se, even rom-coms, basic ones, the simplest ones, sometimes they're up my alley as well. So I don't reject them, I don't shun at them, it depends on my mood.
The moment I wake up, before you put on your
just for clarity's sake, just for formality's sake. So I would like to say that maybe it's not my first choice in terms of the film genres, but really, I have nothing against it. And this one, it's a typical romance and it's a classic, and really, I must say that I enjoyed it nonetheless. So sometimes also not only are the themes moving out of the boundaries of time, but also the film genres.
Michelle Turner joins us now with a movie pair who makes everybody cry pretty much every time they see them in Love Story.
Also, the cast of the film does a great job in terms of their performances, their roles. So I think that, to be honest, they were cast perfectly. Ryan O'Neal is very good, very believable as the main actor, as Oliver, and so is Ali McGraw in her role. And there is visible, noticeable, palpable chemistry between them. I think that that was the most important point of that film. Had it not been for their chemistry, the film wouldn't have worked, but it did, and it did so splendidly on top of that. So props to the people who decided to bet on them.
You're a preppy millionaire and I'm a social zero.
What does that have to do with going our separate ways? We're together now, aren't we? We're happy.
Although at that time they were pretty unknown in the movie business, in the film industry. So I know that prior to their casting, there had been many other actors considered, especially for the main role of the male character, Oliver, like Michael Douglas, James Caan, Christopher Walken was very close as well. But eventually they decided to go with Ryan O'Neal, and it turned out to be a good bet, a good choice, a good call on their part. Can you imagine Christopher Walken in that role? Wow, it's crazy. Wow, I don't know what is going on. She is suffering from something. So, wow, it's crazy. That was my very, very bad impression, very lousy impression of Chris Walken. Props to him, a great guy.
I will say that this gentleman right here does the best Christopher Walken that in the world
happens. Oh my. We're out of soy milk. This is tragic news.
You could say that this film is a little bit like a relic, like a time capsule of the past, and so are several artifacts presented in that film. Like, for example, the main character Oliver, he always addresses his father as Sir. So it reminds me of the games and films set in the Wild Wild West, when they say Sir and Madame.
I think I'm supposed to eat with the team, sir.
Oh, no, it's fine.
That's how children used to address their parents, addressing their fathers as Sir and their mothers as Ma'am. So actually now it's unthinkable, but it shows how much they respected them. And please remember that we always have to respect our parents because they brought us to life. So of course there are sometimes misunderstandings in the family. We have to be able to forgive. Sometimes of course there are some doors which cannot be reopened, unfortunately, for various reasons.
Your father loves you too, Oliver, just the way you're gonna love Bozo, but you Barretts are so goddamn proud and competitive that you'll probably go through your whole life thinking you hate each other.
If it weren't for you.
Yes!
But generally, I think this is also a very important thing stemming even from this film, that we have to respect the elderly people, our parents, because they brought us to life, they nurtured us, they supported us throughout our childhood and the teenagehood and later on sometimes, so and show our appreciation to them for their efforts. So this is also something, by the way, along the lines actually. It's a very good lesson in life. Sir and Mom, thank you very much for actually giving me a chance to be here and even to record this video. So thanks to you, I am the man I am right now. Thanks. Unfortunately, later in the plot, so don't worry, it won't be a big spoiler, but a tragedy ensues. And there is a very big changing point in the narrative. Unfortunately, something bad happens and the couple, they need to deal with it in their own way, but they are always together, they support each other, they are together for better or worse. This is also a very valuable lesson in life and in terms of relationships, that when we decide to be together, we should try to weather all the storms in life, all the hardships, to stand by each other, to support each other, to try to overcome the obstacles. And sometimes, of course, there are no easy solutions.
Yeah. What do I do? I mean, what can I do for Jenny?
Act as normal as possible. for as long as possible.
Unfortunately, also it happens that we need to come to terms with what has happened or what may happen, but we just try to be together and be by each other's side. I would say that this is also a very important taking from this film. A very important, if not even a crucial lesson we may we may learn from Love Story.
Hey, could we afford a taxi?
Sure. Where do you want to go?
The hospital?
On the side note, I know that it's not very related to the film per se, maybe in terms only of the main actor Ryan O'Neal, but later on in 1973 he starred in the film Paper Moon, directed by Peter Bogdanovich, and that was a really underappreciated role of Ryan O'Neal, and this film is also fantastic. So if you ever have a chance to watch Paper Moon, please do it. It's a black and white film, but it was filmed like that on purpose. And actually I have it on Blu-ray and it's a fantastic film worth recommending, worth checking out. So just a side note, something that I've remembered about in terms of Ryan O'Neal.
Kansas, 1936. Out of the darkest days of the Depression comes the adventures of two unlikely con artists, Mose Prey and his companion, Addie Loggins. Don't miss this one. From the maker of The Last Picture Show and What's Up, Doc?
He also starred in The Driver.
20th Century Fox presents two men on opposite sides of the law. Ryan O'Neal, Bruce Dern, Isabella Johnny, The Driver. A ruthless game between two legends.
A pretty interesting driving film, an action flick, also worth giving it a go.
Sounds like you got a problem.
I think that generally this film is regarded as a classic. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars out of 4, so the maximum score, and he was full of praise in terms of this film. Also on IMDb currently it boasts the score of 6.9 out of 10, which is fairly decent as well. I'm definitely in the group, in the camp of those people who are for this film, who appreciate it for what it tried to be, so presenting some values, some merits which are very important in life.
You got kicked out.
Read it, will you please? It's great news.
You were first in the class?
Not quite. Third.
And it is never boring. I think that the running time is perfect because it's around 93 minutes, which is good enough, which is fair enough. It never outstays its welcome with the viewer, with the watcher, with the person watching it. The pacing is correct, the development of the relationship it's also fine, it's well narrated, it doesn't evade, it doesn't escape from or shy away from some important themes which could be even problematic, so it tackles them very subtly, very swiftly, and...
I forgot my key.
Jenny, I'm sorry.
Don't.
Everything is there, all the important elements, like I've said, so the work of the director, the camera crew, the development of the plot, the relationship is believable thanks to the chemistry between the main actors, between the cast. The side roles, the secondary roles and the characters are also believable and credible. So I have no arguments against it. Maybe it is a bit dated, but it is because since that moment the Hollywood industry has been developing all the time, so this is obvious that this team or those teams, the plot, they have been reused and recycled all over the decades, many times, numerous times. So this is something you have to bear in mind, you have to be aware of when you come back to the classic cinema from the older times, that it will be nothing new, nothing fresh, because it laid the grounds for the later films. So it was the trailblazing hero, the precursor, which the later motion pictures capitalized on and developed on. So if you have that in mind, if you bear that in mind, take that into account, if you look at it through the right lens, I think that you won't be disappointed with this film. So whether it's a classic for the good reasons or not, I think it deserves its spot in the Hollywood Hall of Fame. I think that it's well deserved to be one of the films that perhaps could be quoted, could be named as one of the most important and influential romantic films ever made.
The case is closed.
There's still the matter of the RSVP.
Little did I know that there was actually a direct sequel to Love Story. So it was entitled Oliver's Story, and it was released in 1978, so roughly 8 years after the original one, and it continues the story of Oliver. So after what happened in the first one, so like I said, no spoilers, but they decided to continue his story and to cash on the success of their predecessor.
It takes someone very special to help you forget someone very special. Ryan O'Neal, Candice Bergen, Oliver's Story.
Actually, it seems that it didn't work out very well, because the average rating of the film currently on IMDb is 4.6, but some people claim that it's not as bad as everybody else makes it out to be. So I don't know, I haven't had a chance to see the sequel. I would like to, just to see how they decided to move on with the story after what happens in the first one. So this is interesting. At least Ryan O'Neal is there. At least they managed to bring back Ryan O'Neal to that one, but the average rating, the average score is not very encouraging, unfortunately. But if you have a chance to see it, to see Oliver's Story, please watch it and let me know whether it's as bad as they say it is, or maybe it's actually better. Maybe it deserves a better score, a better rating. So I would love to hear something from you also. Maybe you have already seen it. If yes, please share your thoughts on Oliver's Story also with me. I would love to hear from you guys. Thanks. If I may, actually there are many interesting pieces of trivia regarding this film. I'll just read out some of them from the IMDb website, if I may, okay? Here goes the first one. In 1972, this movie was the most viewed film on television of all time. Author Erich Segal, I hope that I haven't butchered his name, wrote the screenplay first, then adapted this into a novel, which was published before the movie's release and became a runaway bestseller. As you can clearly see on the screen, it was the feature film debut of Tommy Lee Jones, a Harvard graduate several months before filming began. Erich Segal based Ryan O'Neal's character on Jones and on his Harvard roommate, future Vice President Al Gore.
Love Story.
You're a preppy millionaire.
And here's this short scene with Tommy Lee Jones. Right, so you can imagine how surprised I was when I saw young Tommy Lee Jones, who, to be honest, always was this kind of a guy who has always looked old. So right now, I don't know, probably he's in his 80s, so he looks old, of course, he looks his age, but even before. So to me, he was this kind of an actor who always looks old, like Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard from the Star Trek franchise, another one of this sort.
And so, my lord, to what base uses we may return, Horatio?
Gee, you look good to me. H, you're so heavenly. I, you're the one I...
This kind of guy, whom I can't imagine looking young, and even in here, so he doesn't look his age to me. This is just my take on him, on Tommy Lee Jones. You know.
Hello, animals.
Hey, Al. What'd you get tonight, Ollie?
An assist on the last goal.
Even in this film, The Fugitive from 1993, there was a now famous scene in which Richard Kimball, the character played by Harrison Ford, screams, shuts out, "I'm innocent!" To which the detective played by Tommy Lee Jones replies, "I don't care."
I didn't kill my wife. I don't care.
The Oscar goes to Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive.
Actually, the IMDb website cites yet another more practical reason standing behind the success of this film. So, as they write, one factor in how this movie became a box office behemoth was its short running time. At just 100 minutes, well, if not fewer to be honest, theaters showing the movie could screen it every 2 hours with 20-minute intermissions, thus getting in an additional showing or two with midnight screenings every day. Another factor was multiple repeat viewings by the same, mostly female, moviegoers, some of whom paid to see this 10 or more times. Oh, that's interesting. Because in one of the late night shows promoting Terminator 2, Judgment Day, Arnold Schwarzenegger also said at that time that probably many people had to go to the cinema to watch Terminator 2 many times, multiple times. And that would explain the success of that film as well.
I know you don't, this is a very expensive movie, but people who have seen it say it's worth every penny. This is going to be like a huge movie, isn't it?
Well, it's a monster. It's absolutely huge.
So maybe there is something in that theory, that back in the day, people would see the same film many times. Actually, I know the example of my friend who saw the second Terminator like around 40 times in different cinemas across Warsaw. So I know for a fact that it is possible. It is a viable reason. Maybe not so much right now with the streaming platforms, etc., and this general access to films, but back in the day when it was the main source of watching films, if not the only one, so that would explain a lot, and that would explain the success of that film and of later films from the next decades. Also, it would explicate why currently films don't gross as much as they used to in the golden era of Hollywood, the dream factory, the film industry.
This is the captain. Brace for impact.
Just to quote the famous line from this film, "Love means never having to say you're sorry."
I'm sorry.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
To be honest, I'm not sure I quite agree with that, because in a typical relationship, you have to say you're sorry many times, I guess, so I wouldn't quite agree with that real love or just love means never having to say sorry. I know that it's very catchy, this phrase, but is it very practical? I don't think so. But this is just me, and from my experience, you have to say you're sorry many times, and it's for the better, because admitting one's mistake, it's nothing to be ashamed of. And remember, also, the rule is just to learn from your own mistakes, so never repeat them again. But this is just my take, and this is just my impression. But, you know, the line has been quoted as probably one of the most renowned and recognizable lines of all time, so there must be something in it, right?
Wrong.
And it has to be good, at least up to a point, doesn't it? And now just more on a technical aspect, on the technical side, so I'm pretty satisfied with the layout of this cover. So it draws the attention, doesn't it? You know, the gold lines and generally, so what it says, like it's the golden collection. There's also the silver one, I know, put on the market by the same company. So this is a good idea to give the cinema goers, to give the film buffs like myself a chance to familiarize themselves with the everlasting classics of the cinema of Hollywood.
Nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture.
This one was published in Poland by Imperial, which I believe is no longer in business, sadly, unfortunately. So you can see that the physical media is dying, so please try to support it. If you have a chance, please buy films also on discs, because it's worth having them in your collection. You know, you may be very proud of the films which you have in your own collection, unlike a digital library, which may disappear any day, any time. So if you have a chance to grab a copy of this one, why not? Maybe it would be the beginning of something new and something good for you. Starting your own collection.
No, seriously, come on, do it. Do it.
As you probably have gathered already, I'm a big fan of college films, and this one, it takes place at Harvard.
What are your backups? I don't need backups. I'm going to Harvard.
So I like this setting, and actually I think that it was one of the last films filmed at Harvard on location, because they were fed up with the production, and actually the film crew was kicked off after only 1 week of shooting. So that's a fun piece of trivia, a fun fact. Anyhow, I like that additional layer, additional atmosphere of a college film, of a university film, thrown in there at the beginning of the narrative.
Yeah, looks like we're in for quite a change.
I'll say. Parties, meeting new people. This is really going to be great.
I don't know.
Just relax, be yourself. Like Davy Crockett always said, you sure you're right?
Because, of course, later on they graduate and they move on with their lives. And this is the real start of their relationship. The point at which the relationship takes off like a plane. So the times of styling, it's only the mere beginning of what happens later on. So you have to give it a whirl, give it a go and see what happens next. But trust me, it will be full of surprises and very dramatic situations, at least one of them.
Doesn't Jennifer teach?
And let's leave her out of this. Just write out a check, Father. It's a personal matter. A very important personal matter.
You got some girl in trouble?
Love Story was one of the contenders, one of runner-ups for as many as 7 Academy Awards, the Oscars, and at the end of the day it got only 1 statuette for the best song, I suppose, I believe. And still, this piece of information is even listed on the cover of this film, and it is something to brag about.
And the winner is Francis Lay for Love Story.
It is potential clickbait for the viewer, isn't it? Don't you think so? That maybe it's worth checking out just on the merits of the nominations it got.
It really was the first script that I really loved.
Really?
And yes, really.
On the one hand, it could be only a marketing gimmick. On the other hand, maybe there was something in it. Of course, you have sometimes in the history of Hollywood many infamous clickbait situations in which you could feel that the film was forced to be one of the Oscar contenders.
And the Oscar goes to Shakespeare in Love.
But in this case, at least for the musical score itself, the nominations were worth it. Because the musical score, the titular song Love Story, is recognized, is sung, is remembered, is known even up to this day. So many decades, 5 decades after the initial release of the film.
Allie's now 76, Ryan 74. They're together again for the Beverly Hills production of Love Letters.
She said I was a diamond in the rough.
In terms of Arthur Hiller and his work as a director, I think that I've seen 2 other films of his own. So that would be Hear No Evil, See No Evil, starring Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder from 1989, and The Babe with John Goodman from 1992.
Where'd you come from, Rook?
From out of nowhere, the man was a legend.
Pass them out to all calls, will you,
John Goodman, The Babe.
And both of the films are worth recommending, but definitely it's Hear No Evil, See No Evil, which is the best out of those 2. Because this is a hilarious, a fantastic comedy. It's a barrel of laughs. Really, I keep coming back to it again and again.
Gene Wilder.
I'm deaf! Repeat, deaf.
Richard Pryor.
I'm blind. Repeat, blind.
Together again. See no evil, hear no evil.
How am I doing?
It's fantastic because one of the guys, so he's visually impaired, the other guy can't hear, so he's hearing impaired, and they have to cooperate together to solve a crime because they are accused of a murder, if I'm not mistaken. And like I said, they make out the differences between themselves and take advantage of the attributes the other one has. So this is incredible, and it leads to so many comical situations that really, even right now, I think that I need to come back to it sooner or later, although I've seen it numerous times.
Don't guide me. They're looking for a blind guy and a deaf guy. Stamp your feet. I'll follow the sound. I feel ridiculous. You look fine to me.
So if you want to spend nice time, if you want to have fun, if you want to watch a good comedy, Hear No Evil, See No Evil is an everlasting classic, that's for sure. So this is fantastic, and definitely, hands down, Gene Wilder's and Richard Pryor's one of the best cooperation efforts ever in their history.
I really think you can stop coming.
Not if it's funny. A good comedy, as you call it, is worth its weight in gold.
Thank you very much for your attention, guys. I hope that you have enjoyed this video review. If you have liked it, so please give this video the thumbs up. Please share your thoughts on the film Love Story from 1970 in the comment section below this video clip, on my performance, on my review, whether you have liked it or not. Any feedback is much appreciated, whether it's a negative or positive one, as long as the criticism is constructive. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll catch you up later. Cheers. Bye.
Watch it, or I'll be back.